Jackson Radio Show.
In relation to the incident, as you've reported, at 8:20 this morning at Parsons Green Tube Station, there was an explosion on a tube train. Police have attended. We now assess that this was a detonation of an improvised explosive device. As you'll have seen, the reports of 18 injuries, and I understand most of those to be flash burns. The scene currently remains cordoned off and the investigation continues. In terms of the police response, as you'd expect, well-practiced command structures have come into shape. An operation led and coordinated by the Metropolitan Police, working with our colleagues from British Transport Police and others. The investigation is being led by the Metropolitan Police Counter-Terrorism Command, part of the National Counter-Terrorism Policing Network. And there are many urgent inquiries ongoing now with hundreds of detectives involved, looking at CCTV, forensic work and speaking to witnesses. This investigation is supported by our colleagues from MI5 and bringing their intelligence expertise to bear on the case. Finally, in terms of the police response, I would emphasise that Londoners particularly can expect to see an enhanced police presence, particularly across transport system, across the day.
Welcome back, everybody. They have found at least some of these bombers that were involved in the London bombing. And what was funny about this, not funny in a good way, but, interesting, I should say, is how the left were so, Donald Trump's jumping to conclusions about this. He jumped to conclusions about the bombing. We don't know if it's a terror attack and all that. We knew it was a terror attack. But they made reference to some terror attack. I think it was in the Philippines. And they said it turned out not to be a terror attack. Well, congratulations. And it was funny. All these leftists are mad at Trump for jumping to the conclusion and saying it was terror. And maybe he got it wrong this time. But he's right most of the time. But it reminds me of Barack Obama jumping to conclusions. He did many times. He jumped to conclusions on Trayvon Martin. He jumped to conclusions on Michael Brown. But he jumped to conclusions before any of that on Gatesgate. Professor Gates. White cop goes to arrest, to look into a situation where a black dude is seen breaking into Professor Gates' home by his neighbor who was across the street. Because every time I tell this story, people go, well, they had to know what Gates looked like. I go, yeah, because everybody knows what somebody looks like crawling through their neighbor's window. Everybody believes that the person who owns a home gets into his house through the window. Okay, can I continue? Thank you. Yes. So the neighbor does his job in Professor Gates' neighborhood, calls the cops and says, somebody's breaking into my neighbor's home. And the cop on the beat, happened to be a white dude, he responds, rings the doorbell, does what he does. Gates answers the door and he says, I'm going to need to see some ID. Gates says, this is my house. He says, sir, it probably is. But it would be good if you could show me ID because somebody saw somebody else entering the home. I need to make sure you're not under duress. I also need to make sure that you are really you. It's to be expected. I would hope you would appreciate that that's my job. And Gates goes, no, it's racist. You don't like me because I'm black. And the cop's going, it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the fact that my job is to verify that you're indeed the homeowner. And sir, by the way, if you are the homeowner, this is for your protection. And he's trying to reason his way out of this. But there is no reasoning with a leftist. And the smarter they are, the less reasonable they are. Because you know why? They believe they have power. When I say the smarter they are, I mean the more education they've attained. It doesn't mean they're smart. So Gates is a professor at Harvard. Now, you've heard me talk about Harvard. I talked about it earlier in the broadcast where I said Harvard gave us the most stupid president I've ever seen, and I didn't think anybody could be dumber than Carter, but Barack Obama was. Harvard wanted to make Chelsea Manning a fellow, a teaching, traveling speaker or whatever they call it, a fellow to come in and give speeches to the university. And Chelsea, whatever his name was, Danny Manning, Bruce Manning, whatever it is, was a person who gave away our secrets and then decided didn't like life as a man pulled a Caitlin on us and went to prison. And they say, that's a good fellow. Yeah, like Angela Davis, right? Or, I don't know. Hey, I tell you what, if Michael Brown had survived trying to kill a cop, maybe he could have been a good fellow. This is disturbing. And we allow this stuff to happen with our, and you could say, Kevin, we weren't silent about this. We didn't have to be. We are silent about it. Harvard self-corrected because their alumni and people said, look, we're not tolerating this. But Harvard is still going to be Harvard. Harvard will revere itself because it now has another president. And anyway, all of this comes on the heels of, the reason why I'm even talking about this stuff is I want to get into the bombing, the Chelsea bombing. You know, Donald Trump makes the comment that this is terrorist. And we knew it was terrorist. I mean, I've chronicled recently the number of attacks that there have been by Muslim terrorists in London. It's crazy. Leading up into the 90s and maybe even part of the 2000s, the attacks in London or in the UK were mostly by the IRA. Just go look it up. The Irish Republican Army, you know, planting bombs, car bombs, etc. That's what you heard. I looked in the last 10 years, the last decade, and the majority of the attacks were almost exclusively Muslim. That's how long the IRA has almost said, you know what? It doesn't do us any good to attack because, you know, the Muslims are doing such a good job. So that's where we are. Unbelievable. So we get this attack of the London Tube. They call it the Tube. It's a subway system. And flashback to Trump during the campaign and the promises he made. Outside of not locking up Hillary Clinton, that's the only one that he really didn't keep. He said he was going to be tough on terror. And he has been. And he's attempting to limit the very things that London has suffered from for the last 10 years. And the left fight him. They want these terrorists on our shores. And let me tell you, London, it ain't over. It's just beginning. London, as I said, in the last decade, London hadn't done much. It's been dominated by Muslim terrorists over the last decade. It will escalate beyond belief. I'm going to make a prediction to you guys that London will have more terror attacks in the next year than they will have had in the last 5 years. So Trump wants to end that. But yet again, the world faces more terror by Muslims, and the left want to pretend, oh, Donald Trump, he's jumping to conclusions and all this. We're not jumping to conclusions, folks. This is real. And I believe that I talked about this before, but I think there was an attack in France. I have to look. This is going to escalate. And we need to be looking at this more vigilantly and making sure that it doesn't occur here. And thankfully, it hasn't in a while because we got new leadership.
This is the Kevin Jackson Radio Show.